Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomax and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomax and Capital Cycles. Hey, we're bike racing. On the weekend, it was the Wellington Masters Cycling Club 2-day tour that they run every January. Let me tell you all about it because I won. It's a race I wanted to win for a little while. And I won the whole thing in A grade. So that was pretty exciting. Let me tell you a couple of things I learnt from that, what went on, some sort of philosophical thoughts about it, and some sort of technical takeaways. And I'll show you a little feature that you can have a look at. I was thinking about form. Surprisingly, mine's pretty good. I was thinking about how you can quantify that. I'll show you with a new little tool I like to use in cycling analytics. It's the software we use at FitLab. Show you how to quantify what your form is really like, not what you think it's like, what it is really like. I'll tell you about next week's event, but I'll only tell you briefly because I've already mentioned it last week. I made a little snafu in last week's podcast. I said that next week's race was this week's race, this week's race was this week's race, and next week's race was this week's race. So Dr. Seuss would say, you get the idea. I mentioned this week's race last week. Alright, well, the Wellington Masters Cycling Club runs events all the time, but they have 2 or 3 major events they run, one of which is the 2-day tour. So this is always about this time every year. It's run on 3 courses in the Wairarapa. We had hot sunny weather both days. They run it on anniversary weekend so that you get a chance to come home on Monday and basically recover. This race I've done about 3 years now, and I've made a lot of mistakes in it in the past, and I was quite wanting to make sure I didn't repeat those. Sorry about the noise, by the way. I'm on the turbo trainer just spinning the legs out for some active recovery after the weekend, and I've got the fan on because it's hot, so I'm sorry about that if the sound quality isn't that great, but it's all I can do. So let's have a look. I'll just go through maybe the stages here, just some quick data, and what I think is really important is this prologue. So 3 stages. Prologue, out and back to individual time trial of 8 kilometres. Stage 2 is just a short road race stage by the lake, 50-something Ks. Stage 3, yesterday, about 95 Ks. Sort of figure of 8 course, which was really good. And by the way, the word is that yesterday's stage 2, the 3rd stage of the tour, the 2nd road stage, that's going to be the same course as for the age group national champs. Okay, so I'll show you the grades and things we're talking about. I think most people would say it's a good course. It's a good course to use. It's going to suit someone who's probably someone like me, who's a like biggish, powerful unit, is able to operate in the winds. Not huge climbs, some power climbs. Pretty good mixed course though, so it should suit a lot of people. But I'm excited about that. I think it's good. Could end up in a sprint actually, so bring your sprint legs. I'll show you a bit more about the detail about it in a minute. Alright, so let's go back to the first stage, the prologue. This is my data. So what have we got here? We've got 11 minutes and 15 seconds moving time for this. So I picked up the fastest time on the day. Climbing 12 meters is basically flat. Worked 250 kilojoules, exactly one hamburger pretty much expended in that 11 minutes. And an average power of 371 watts. So I was going for, on my little course notes here, an average power of 360 to 370 watts. 1 watt better than that, for an average speed of 42.9 kilometers an hour. That's my best of the 3 times I've done this. My best power, my fastest time. I'm really happy with that. And briefly, what you always want to see in any time trial like this is a quick period of acceleration to speed, into position and power within 30 seconds. And you get the 25-second mark there if you're looking at the screen. Burst of power up to maxing out at about 750 watts. Quickly into target power and speed, very happy with that. And 4, from the period for 30 seconds right up till the turn, which took 5 minutes and 50 seconds odd. Oh, I can't, I'm just on doing my podcast right now, sweetheart. What's the matter? Okay, I'll be up in a minute. Yay! Sorry guys, school holidays. Into an average speed there, which was very consistent, an average power 367 watts. Little burst of acceleration after the turn. Again, for most of that, 4 minutes of it, pretty much exactly the same power, and a burst in the final minute, maybe 40 seconds, averaging a lot more power. So maybe the takeaway, 480 watts for the final 30 seconds. Makes me think I probably could have brought up the average power, maybe 10 watts or so, but pretty well calibrated ride. Pretty happy with that. Matt Webber was only 4 or 5 seconds behind me, and Brent Backhouse, also a big danger for me in this race. I may have got about 20 seconds on him, 25 seconds or something like that, so a good buffer. So that sort of sets up the tone for the race, because from there those guys need to take out time out of me, and I can afford to be a little bit defensive. I don't have to be particularly attacking to take back time, but at the same time I've made mistakes in the past, and in short, the mistake I've made in the past was sitting back in the bunch, letting attacks go off the front, and the bunch wouldn't work. So I made sure that wouldn't happen this time. I did have guys come to say to me things like, oh, you're doing too much work on the front. And actually that's not right, because one thing you need to be, maybe it depends how strong you're feeling, but I'm feeling pretty strong in that group, and it's not hurting me. If I was going and taking some turns on the front, which are pretty light, and that was hurting me, yes, that would make a difference. But when I'm going on the front, it's pretty soft, and I'm certainly chasing guys, but none of this is hurting me, and that's the difference. So no, the fact that I'm patrolling the front pretty hard is not a tactical error, and in fact, yes, it's conservative, and yes, it's probably costing me some energy, that's true. But let's remember, I've made up some time in that prologue, so I need to ride that way. So you have to think about, after a prologue like this in a stage race, how you're going to run it. And to be honest, I think you're better off riding hard, covering brakes. Don't rely on chance. So one thing I'd say, look, even if you're not that strong, still don't rely on chance, still chase stuff. And you know what, if you get beaten fair and square because you can't hold the wheel, that's good too, because that's bike racing. Alright, stage 2, first road race stage was short, 1 hour and 18 minutes, 51.2 Ks, 1424 kgs, that's 5 or 6 hamburgers, average speed of 39.2, and average power of 303 watts. So look at this, effective power 343, so that's the effective metabolic cost reflected in power for this race. And if you look at this first maybe quarter of the race, we were putzing along pretty low, and the power only really went on when we came past Featherston, headed down south, and from there on there was a lot of very hard attacks by guys like Matt Webber, me, Sean Williams from Auckland, riding really strong and hard, putting it in the gutter, laying down some watts, guys holding on for dear life. That was great bike racing. I enjoyed that. Most of the bunch stayed together. I mean, there's only about 10 of us, and most of the stay. It was a really well matched group. The rollers here in the final, turning back up north and coming back towards Martinborough, in the final 30 minutes, saw some really powerful attacks by, again, same guys, Brent Backhouse having a couple of goes, and we dislodged a few riders there who had to time trial back by themselves. Left it with a group of 4, who was me, Sean Williams, Brent Backhouse, Matt Webber, and we were throwing some attacks down pretty strong in this final 15 minutes. Matt Webber especially has this great motor where what he does is he kind of does what I do. He's a smaller guy, but he has massive flat power, and he will throw down 500 watts in the gutter for a minute, but then he kind of, maybe he'll pull off, but he's not done. He can still keep going. He doesn't blow up. So that was really impressive to see. In the final, it was Brent Backhouse went long from about 300 metres out, a little tailwind. I tried to get on his wheel, could not. We dropped the other guys. And Brent Backhouse clawed back 2 or 3 seconds on me. We both got some time bonuses, so he clawed back a little bit of time. We got some more time on the other 2 dangers, Matt Webber and Sean Williams. In stage 3, much longer, 2 hours 27 minutes, 94.4 k's. Climbing 670 metres in this, as I say, is the course which, don't quote me on this, but is evidently the front runner for the course for age group national champs in April. This is the age grade, so the not elite grade, everyone else in New Zealand coming to fight out the age grades in the road race. This is probably the course, okay? So you can go and look. I made a Strava segment called WMCC 2-Day Tour Stage 2. You can go and have a look at it if you want to see the topography and things like that. What about it? So the first lap, most of it's flat to rolling. The main feature in the first part is the climb up Millers. It's not the steep side of Millers, it's the other side. I mean, if I zoom in here, you are looking at, it gets steeper towards the top. The grade for the entire climb might be an average grade of over 3%, but at the top, for the top 3 minutes of climbing, it gets up a little more. We've got an average gradient of 4%, and in the top sort of last minute, the grade going 5 to maybe 6%. So not big, and it can suit, you know, a bigger guy because the raw power compared to the power to watts, power to weight isn't so important. There's quite a steep, fast little descent on the other side, and that's probably where the race will light up. Up till then, there's some small rolling features, but not a lot. And then it's sort of like the small rolling features, bridges, small climbs, until the final, which is flat and straight. You turn left, you come down into the vineyards of Martinborough, and you are basically, it's about, I mean, at race pace, it's about 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes So I don't know how you want to approach that. Could well be a bunch sprint. So you want to time it right, know where the finish is. In this race, again, it stayed together pretty well for us yesterday. I lit it up pretty hard near the top of the Miller's climb there, for the final minute. Putting in a pretty good burst there, averaging for a minute about close to 500 watts, which was pretty strong. It wasn't strong enough to really dislodge many people. We dislodged riders over time, Karen Allwood from Cramp and various people, but there was probably coming into the final still 7 or 8 riders. There was sort of this half-hour sprint with about 600 to 800 meters to go, and then it accelerated, and I used my the energy I had to come past, counter-attack, and basically let it up from there with about 400 to go. So this is my long sprint here. I'm just zooming in, and really you can see from, if I highlight that period, the last 50 seconds, so I was probably out of the saddle sprinting for best part of a minute. We dropped everyone except for, you guessed it, Brent Backhouse. Clawed his way up. I looked behind me, he's clawing his way back to my wheel, and he put in a great burst to finish me off with about 50 meters to go. Came around me and won by a few bike lengths, which was really classy. I looked at the data in Strava. His power and my power for that sprint was identical, within about 5 watts. But of course, the big difference is I weigh 10 kilos more than him, and that, my friends, is mass to accelerate, but it's also going to be a little aero drag, the size. So 2 days of excellent sprinting from Brent Backhouse. It wasn't enough to take back the time from me, so I won the tour outright, which was good. So it's good results here fast results from the timing team, who Master Cycling Club used for the timing. If we just have a quick look down results here, top 5 in A grade, I won with a time of 3 hours 56 combined in 23 seconds. Brent Backhouse about 15 seconds back from me on GC. Matt Webber in third, another 5 seconds back. Sean Williams coming down from Auckland, about 3/4 of a minute back from there, and Stephen McKinstry, who had a great breakaway. We hauled back about another 4 seconds back from there. So a good time in A grade. In B grade, check this out. 1 second separating top 3. We got first Phil Sporer, 4:09.47, Mark Hussey, 4:09.48, and Stephen R2 O'Keefe, 4:09.48. So there must be some reason why, like, he's third. Maybe on time they're the same, but maybe Mark Hussey had a better placing or something. So that just shows you how, in a prologue, even if it's short, you really want to bury yourself, because those 1, 2, 3 seconds that you save in a turn, or you get from a little aero advantage or something, could definitely be the difference between the podium or not. C grade, Darren Southern, from Greg Forsyth and Greg Cundy. D grade, Rex Dowding, Alan Luff and Dave Grimmond. E grade, the elite as they're known. First, John Lusinski, good for you. Ray Haston second, and Greg Bailey in third. The women, the fastest woman overall, Natalie Howell winning again. Look at that time, 4:23.23, that's super hardcore. Same time, Rachel Cunningham. Again, it must have been 1 minute behind Rachel was, sorry. And third, Eileen Savage Campbell, 4:26.24. Great to see a decent women's field turning out. So, yeah, I hope that's useful information, especially about that stage 2 course. I'm probably going to go out and ride that course a couple more times. It's a good length for an endurance training ride. It's not, if there's one thing I could say, maybe it's, we got pretty lucky with the wind. Wind could change everything on that course, and you do not want to be, if it gets put in the gutter and the wind is very strong, you do not want to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, lose the wheel and go backwards. That could quite easily happen, and I've seen it happen in that course before. What I'm talking about there, if you don't know, just to quickly explain, is like, you can imagine if you're riding down the road and the wind is very strongly coming from your right shoulder, say, well, you can imagine that if you go to the front with a couple of teammates, if you're riding like that, or solo by yourself, and you really go very close to the left-hand side of the road, well, normally what would happen is people would ride behind you and slightly to the left to get a little more shelter from the wind, but of course if the wind's very strongly from that right-hand side and you're riding in the gutter, there's nowhere to go. You can ride on the grass, but that's not going to be very good. So you have to ride directly behind and you don't get shelter from the wind. And that's what putting it in the gutter is. And it can be, if you're a strong rider on the flat, that can be a really effective technique, just as good as if you're, say, a good power to weight climber and you have a steep hill. This is the tactic that guys like me, time trialist types, need to use when it's windy. The same thing can happen when it's coming from your left shoulder, but the effect is less because you can imagine you're supposed to stay on the left-hand side of the road, right? So you're riding, and in the middle of the road there's the white line. Now, most races, the road is not closed. You need to stay on that left-hand side of the road for safety. And if the wind is coming very strongly from your left shoulder, you can ride on that white line, and in principle, of course, no one should be able to shelter behind you in the same way as if you're riding on the left. Of course, that doesn't happen in reality. What happens in reality is people just go across the white line and get a shelter anyway. And that's not great. I mean, that's a little bit dangerous because sometimes you're a bit shagged out when you're doing that. There's cars coming. I can't recommend it. Guys do it all the time. And in fact, in some extreme situations, what people will do, and I definitely don't really want to say this is a good idea, but I've seen it plenty of times, is guys will ride on the opposite side of the road. So they're in the gutter, but on the other side of the road. And you can imagine if there's an oncoming car being driven by a psychopath bogan, that is got every chance of it ending really, really badly. So all I'd say is let's not get each other's killed, chaps. It's just a bike race. Alright. I'll just quickly show you a thing I figured might be useful for you. You know, guys are always talking about form, and if you don't have a power meter, I don't particularly want to hear you talking about what your form is or isn't. Why? Because you don't know. You might feel crappy, you might feel good, your time might be good, your time might be bad. None of those things say anything about how much power you are actually producing. The only thing that says anything about how much power you're producing is a properly calibrated power meter. So, number one, get a power meter if you're interested in training. Stop messing around, go to Capital Cycles, get a decent power meter, and look, so we're going to have the same conversation like a broken record, which is, yes, it costs a lot of money. Yes, it does. You're going to be spending probably a minimum of $1,500, $1,600 on a decent one. Get a good one, like a Quark D0 or a Garmin Vector 3. The PowerTap P1s are pretty good as well. Stop diddling around and do it. And until you do that, don't come and have a discussion about what your form is or isn't, because you don't know. You can make a guess. Most people are just reporting on their perceived exertion. So here's the thing. You get your power meter, a good one, not a crappy Stages, Not some half-assed single-sided job. Unless you're totally skint, spend the money, get a good one. If you want one that goes on the hub, get a PowerTap G3, just do it. And then you're going to compare your heart rate, your power, and your perceived exertion. That'll tell you a little bit more about your form. Okay, so my form's okay. It's not at the top level because I've got some other goals in mind for the season, but it's okay. Well, okay, that's the statement of objective truth. How do we determine that? Well, let's have a look. You can look at some discrete places where you know you were going well. How do you know you're going well? Because you can look at your power curve. So here's a power curve which represents my power, ability to put down power over time. On the x-axis, as you know, is time. On the y-axis, is power. So you can select any point along that, see your best efforts in cycling analytics and your efforts on the day. So I can see, if I want to go down here, I can see this is a stage 1 coming out to Edge Hill just out of Martinborough. It's a short climb, it's only a minute. Quite high power, average power of 575 watts. Now that is high. How do I just quantify high? Because I look at my power curve, you can see there. That's only certainly not my best power, but it's within 50 watts of my best for that period, which is pretty decent. You combine that with your heart rate somewhat, but heart rate's too variable. You want to look at your perceived exertion. This is what it sounds like, which is just how hard did it feel. And that, my friends, did not feel hard to me. It felt super easy. In fact, it felt like I could have just gone on attack over the top, no problem, which I sort of did. Doesn't mean you always should, because it's not necessarily going to get your result, but it felt fine. So what have I got? I've got a piece of objective data, which is my power, and I know it was a strong effort because I can compare using the power curve, and then I can relate that to my perceived exertion. So the form's pretty good. Why does this matter? Well, of course it matters because you can determine whether your training's working or not. One of the reasons I like doing what I do is because I can put into action this sort of what is reasonably determined to be best practices for sports science for periodization of cycling training, and it works pretty good. Like one of my favorite phrases is change your opinion in accordance with the facts. And just because today we have some pretty good models for determine what types of training and in what order produce good results, that can potentially change over time. And as a matter of fact, I have updated using some high intensity protocols some of my riders' programs over the last 6 months, and I'll keep evolving that as the science changes, as the evidence changes. It's not going to stay the same, and I will be the guinea pig for it, guys. Just the last thing I'd say about that is, one of the pieces of evidence that seems to be coming out lately is that your anaerobic capacity is, probably your athletic capacity as a whole, but especially your VO2 max and your anaerobic capacity above that is quite likely to be highly, highly genetically determined. Now, aside from vast quantities of highly illegal and experimental drugs like GW50516, there is no known way to change those parameters apart from, you can change them a bit with the standard sort of periodization techniques that we use at PhilLab, but you really just need to stimulate your anaerobic capacity in some way, and your genetics will take care of the rest. How do you do that? You do some very high intensity reps. That's what you do. If you want to talk to me about that, whether you're being coached by me or not, you can. It's worked really well for me. It's worked really well for a lot of my riders, and I've got a bit of evidence for it. So I think that's good. So that's what I sort of took out of it. Last thing I'd say, because I'm not going to talk about next week's race, it was in the previous podcast. Well, except to say next week's race is Masters Cycling Club Inter-Club race. Short one, it's 40-something Ks. Basically sort of like around similar roads to this. I think it finishes up the steep side of Miller's Climb. Short, sort of 2-minute climb. Save a bit of gas for that. Could be a good one. The last thing I'll say is, I noticed that one of the most enjoyable things about these type of amateur races is the feeling amongst everyone. And I have this notion in my head where, as males, we kind of need some sort of semi-aggressive outlet for our natural tendencies, and bike racing is pretty good for that. There was this definite feeling of setting off in a bunch. You sort of going off and hunting each other. It's kind of like playing paintball when you're a kid or something. You're kind of furiously beating each other up. But there is no doubt that if there was a crash or a hazard or something, everyone points it out or stops or does what they need to for everyone else. So it was this weird mix of just full-on death and destruction and really pushing yourself hard, combined with this kind of brotherly love amongst everyone. And to be honest, I think that's the best and most healthy mix you can have, and I enjoy that. The guys I was racing with on the weekend, some of them are friends and some of them are just acquaintances and all that, but they're some of the best, most enjoyable relationships I've got in my life. I love my children, I love my wife, I love lots of people in my life, and the guys I race with, especially yesterday, you sort of finish and you're sort of just one step away from giving each other a hug, and it's a very nice feeling. And if you haven't tried, especially stage races, I don't know what it is about it. It's just because you're in this sort of like multi-day battle together. You should try it. And if nothing else, even if you're not there to win or even do very well, you can be there to help other people. You can be there just for the atmosphere, and it's something I love doing. I'm very proud of my FitLab riders for doing so well this weekend. I'm very proud to be membership of the Master Cycling Club. I'm proud to be able to support the event with some FitLab prizes, and I feel really great about winning and hopefully showing that we do a good job here at FitLab. I'm excited about it. Thank you to the marshals. There's too many to thank, and the organisers, especially Rob Timoana, who always does this professional job of presenting and organising behind the scenes, which no doubt 99% of it no one ever sees. I organise plenty of mountain bike races in my time for the PNP Club, and it's true that you don't hear from 99% of people, and when you do, it's usually, it's a complaint about something. So I would just like to say, I have zero complaints. It was magnificent. You glorious bastards. Another good race. Thank you. I enjoyed it. I will be back. Alright, so I'll leave it there. As always, it's brought to you by FitLab. Tell nutrition, biomix and capital success of you, like a training plan from me. You go to fitlab.co.nz. You can even email me at steve@fitlab.co.nz. I will see you on the weekend. Thanks for watching / listening to Faster You Fall, brought to you by FitLab, Capital Cycles, Tailwind Nutrition and Biomaxa. If you'd like to get in touch for a coaching program or testing, give me a hold of me, steve@fitlab.co.nz. Go to fitlab.co.nz. Talk soon, guys.